Hello, and thank you for joining the Assistance for Small Meat Processors. Before we begin, please ensure you have opened the WebEx participant and chat panels by using the associated icons located at the bottom of your screen. If you require technical assistance, please send a chat to the event producer. Please note that all audio connections are muted at this time. You may ask a question at any time by selecting all panelists from the drop-down menu in the chat panel, enter your question in the message box, and send. Alternatively, you may ask a question by pressing pound 2 on your telephone keypad to ask a verbal question. Questions will be addressed towards the end. As a reminder, this conference will be recorded. With that, I'll turn the conference over to Shayla Bailey. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Andre. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today to discuss USDA assistance for small meat processors. My name is Shayla Bailey, and I will be moderating today's webinar with help from our event producer, Andre. We have a pretty full agenda today and a lot to cover, including opening remarks and an overview of the grant of inspection process, as well as learning about funding options for small-scale processing. Once we have heard from our presenters, we will use the rest of our time to take questions from our audience. There will be 2 ways, as Andre mentioned, to ask questions. You can submit them by typing them into the chat window and sending them to all panelists. And then you'll also be given instructions later, again, for how to put yourself into the question queue to ask your question verbally during the question and answer session towards the end of our event. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Mindy Brashears, who will get us started with some opening remarks. Dr. Brashears?
Thank you, Shayla. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mindy Brashears, and I'm the Undersecretary for Food Safety at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The Office of Food Safety oversees the Food Safety and Inspection Service, or what you probably know as the FSIS, and our mission is to ensure that meat, poultry, and processed egg products are safe, wholesome, and accurately labeled. I'm pleased to be here today with our colleagues from USDA's Rural Development to share information that we hope you will find useful and helpful for your small businesses. The COVID-19 pandemic has cast a new light on how many Americans think about their access to food. Both the government and the public have recognized that a safe and abundant food supply is a matter of national and personal security. The public health crisis has also highlighted the important role that small producers and processors play in our nation's food supply. More than 90%, or about 5,200, of the slaughter and processing establishments regulated by FSIS are considered small or very small. Our relationship with these businesses is very important, and we prioritize outreach to these establishments to communicate policies and regulations, provide necessary tools and resources, and improve compliance. Outreach takes several forms, including roundtable discussions, personalized outreach from FSIS staff, and technical support through agency tools such as the Small Plant Help Desk, Ask FSIS, and compliance guidelines. FSIS also supports state meat and poultry inspection programs where the state needs to enforce at least equal to federal laws and methods. Additionally, the agency supports the Cooperative Interstate Shipment Program, under which state-inspected establishments adhere to the same as standards as FSIS. FSIS leadership will share a few more details about these opportunities and programs a little later in the webinar. I am joined today by our FSIS Administrator, Paul Kicker, as well as our Assistant Administrator of the Office of Field Operations, Phil Bronstein, and Acting Assistant Administrator of the Office of Investigation, Enforcement, and Audit, Carlin Cockrum. At USDA, we know that our food producers and processors are the backbone of America, and we are here to support you. I grew up on a farm in West Texas where we were raised primarily cotton and cattle, and I've seen firsthand that businesses in rural America might not always have access to the capital necessary to grow their businesses. Today, we are coming together with our colleagues from USDA's Rural Development to provide information and resources on the services and assistance that USDA can provide you. FSIS will be sharing information on state and federal inspection programs for individuals who might be interested in starting or growing their business, as well as the process of applying for a federal grant of inspection. Our colleagues from Rural Development will provide information on several of the existing grant and loan assistance programs available to small businesses. We also have plenty of time for you to ask questions to both FSIS and Rural Development about these processes and programs. Next, I'd like to introduce USDA's Deputy Undersecretary for Rural Development, Betty Brandt. Betty, I'll turn it over to you to make a few opening remarks.
Well, thank you so much, Mindy. And it truly is a pleasure to collaborate with our sister mission area here at USDA to talk to you today about the resources for small-scale meat processors. The lenders on this call probably already know Rural Development, but you may not have worked with us in the food production and processing space. And meanwhile, the producers and processors on this call may not have heard about us at all. So I want to give you a big picture view of who we are, what we do, and how we can work together. So the mission of Rural Development's programs is to improve the economy and the quality of life in rural America. And this is through financial support and investment in business and economic development, in community facilities such as hospitals, healthcare facilities, fire halls, rescue equipment, and in housing, providing resources for affordable single-family housing and multifamily housing. And, of course, the needed infrastructure such as high-speed internet, water and wastewater facilities, electricity providers. All of these we help support through financial support and investment. You can think of it really as foundational support for a thriving community. So delivering on this mission is made possible through local partnerships and local action. And that's where most of our employees here at Rural Development are located, in the state and field offices. If you're a lender and if a small meat producer or processor comes to you for help, we want you to do business with them. And I would love it if Rural Development, the Rural Development State Office, is your very first phone call. You can find all of the contact information for our state offices on our website at rd.usda.gov. And it's my pleasure today to be joined by Mark Brodziski, our Rural Business and Cooperative Service Deputy Administrator, and Andy Jamalowitz, Assistant Deputy Administrator of the Business Development Division. So I'm going to let my colleagues talk more about the nuts and bolts of our specific programs, including available funding, eligibility, and how to apply a little bit later in the webinar. But before I turn the call over to FSIS Administrator Paul Kicker, I want to thank you all for all you do to help our rural communities, because when rural America thrives, all America thrives. So now I'll turn it over to Paul. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Betty. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us on this webinar today. I hope that you find this information to be useful. I'm Paul Kicker. I'm the FSIS Administrator. And I'd like to introduce two of our senior leaders at FSIS who will provide an overview of the grant process for getting a federal grant of inspection. Phil Bronstein is our Assistant Administrator of the Office of Field Operations, and Carlin Cockrum is our Acting Assistant Administrator of the Office of Investigation, Enforcement, and Audit. I'll turn it over to Phil to get us started. Phil?
All right. Thanks a lot, Paul. I'm here to talk about FSIS's process for grants of inspection. So FSIS has a very robust process in place to certify that every establishment has all the necessary infrastructure, processes, procedures, and documents in place to produce safe and wholesome meat, poultry, and egg products prior to that establishment being able to make the product and ship it into commerce. Next slide. This slide has a couple of very useful links on it, and they're centered around the grant of inspection process. So in order for an establishment to be certified to slaughter and or process meat, poultry, and egg products for interstate commerce, including export, they must have a federal grant of inspection. And the first step in this process is to submit an application, which can be found on the links on the bottom link on this slide. So you fill that out and then send it to the appropriate district office, which is the top link on the slide. We have 10 district offices throughout the country, and on this graphic you can see which states they're responsible for. Next slide. So in the federal grant of inspection, the establishment has to develop a written sanitation standard operating procedures and actually conduct a hazard analysis and develop and validate their HACCP plan. So FSIS centers around hazard analysis and critical control point plans, which means that the establishment needs to look at their own processes, oftentimes in conjunction with FSIS and other third-party entities that can help with this, identify the hazards, and then make up critical control points to mitigate these hazards. And all of this must be done before FSIS will issue the grant of inspection. After the owner or designees believe that they have the necessary requirements to start operation, then FSIS inspection personnel will conduct an on-site review at the establishment and of the documents to make sure that they're all in order. Next slide. If all of the items meet the regulatory requirements, then what happens next is a conditional grant of inspection is issued. And what this allows the establishment to do is to operate for 90 days so that they can validate their HACCP plan. So just to make sure that their food safety plan is addressing all of the hazards, and all of the hazards that are reasonably likely to occur have been identified. And this validation involves ensuring that the plan is adequate in controlling the food safety hazards, and in verifying that that plan is being effectively implemented in practice. And as I said before, during this time, product can be produced for distribution into commerce. In addition to any deficiencies that may be in the HACCP plan, the FSIS administrator may refuse to grant federal inspection because the applicant has not met humane handling, sanitation, or any other inspection requirements. Next slide. Once an establishment is operating under a federal grant of inspection, FSIS has an ongoing process in place to continually verify that every establishment maintains its infrastructure, processes, procedures, and documents in a manner to continue to produce safe and wholesome food products. If any establishment does not meet these standards as required by U.S. laws and FSIS regulations, then FSIS has mechanisms in place to withdraw the federal grant of inspection. FSIS might also withdraw the federal grant of inspection if there any other criminal activity occurs at the establishment. If FSIS withdraws the federal grant of inspection, then that establishment will no longer be able to slaughter or process meat, poultry, or egg products for interstate commerce or export. Next slide. So at FSIS, we have about 6,500 regulated establishments throughout the United States and territories. And as you can see on the slide, about 5,200 of those, or 90% of all federally inspected establishments, are either small or very small. And so we have developed a variety of processes to offer support for small businesses. And to help support these establishments, FSIS prioritizes outreach to communicate policies and regulations. As you see on the slide here, I have 147 enforcement, investigations, and analysis officers who have in-depth training about HACCP plans and implementation of HACCP plans and food safety. to enforce and do investigations, but also to provide outreach. For small businesses looking to apply for a federal grant of inspections, we also have coordinators in every district office who are available to help you through the application process. Next slide. You can access guidelines, educational materials, training resources on topics such as how to develop a product recall plan, how to develop a HACCP plan, a robust systematic approach to humane handling, or other topics on the FSIS website. We also have folks that can be available to talk you through the development of any of these materials. For small businesses that are already operating under a federal grant of inspection, our goal is to provide the necessary tools and resources to improve compliance and ultimately ensure the safety of our food supply. As I said previously, FSIS has begun an outreach initiative targeted towards small and very small establishments in 2018, where our enforcement, investigations, and analysis officers dedicate up to 25% of their time to perform outreach. If you are a federally inspected establishment or you're interested in it, please contact your district office, and they can schedule a time when an EIO, an Enforcement Investigation Analysis officer, can visit your establishment or get in contact with you and answer any questions you may have. FSIS also offers technical support through agency tools such as the Small Plant Help Desk, Ask FSIS, and also our compliance guidelines. The Help Desk and Ask FSIS are there to help answer questions that may be unique to small and very small plants. At this time, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Carlin Cockrum, to talk about the state meat poultry inspection programs.
Thank you, Phil. The Federal Meat Inspection Act and the Poultry Products Inspection Act authorize FSIS to cooperate with state agencies in developing and administering meat and poultry inspection programs. Under cooperative agreements with FSIS, states may operate their own meat and poultry inspection programs that oversee the slaughter and processing of meat and poultry products for distribution in intra-state commerce. This means commerce within that particular state. Each state needs to enforce at least equal to federal laws and methods imposed under the FMIA and the PPIA. Federal law prohibits products under this program from being shipped interstate unless the state has an additional cooperative interstate shipment program, which Phil Bronstein will discuss later. Currently, there are 27 states operating their own meat and poultry inspection programs, as shown on this slide. FSIS provides up to 50% of the state's operating funds, as well as training and other assistance. FSIS provides approximately $58 million annually to support the 27 meat and poultry inspection programs currently operating. Next slide. Once a state has established its program, FSIS conducts annual comprehensive paper audits of state meat and poultry inspection programs and their requirements, including enforcement of those requirements with respect to slaughter, preparation, processing, storage, handling, and distribution of livestock carcasses and parts, meat and meat food products, and poultry products. In addition to that, FSIS conducts on-site, in-person audits at least once every 3 years. FSIS assumes direct responsibility, which is called designating a state under federal inspection, those state plants when a state fails to develop or effectively enforce inspection requirements that are at least equal to the federal requirements. FSIS determines whether each state meat and poultry inspection program is at least equal to the federal inspection program and includes an evaluation of the following 9 components: statutory authority and food safety regulations, inspection, sampling programs, staffing, training, and supervision, humane handling, laboratory methods and quality assurance program, compliance, civil rights, and financial accountability. I will now hand it back over to Phil to discuss the Cooperative Interstate Shipment, or CIS, programs.
Thanks, Carlin. So state-inspected meat and poultry products are limited to in-state commerce only unless both the state MPI program and the producing state-inspected establishment participate in the Cooperative Interstate Shipment Program, or CIS program. To participate in the CIS program, the state and the FSIS have to enter into a supplemental cooperative agreement in addition to that one in place for the MPI program. Under this agreement, the state would need to maintain a program that is same as for those facilities that would like to be part of the CIS program. That means that the state would need to have trained inspectors, use the same computer systems, and have laboratory services that are the same as FSIS. State-inspected establishments that participate in the CIS program would then be permitted to ship and sell their meat and poultry products in interstate commerce. There are 7 states that participate in the CIS program: Iowa, Indiana, Maine, Missouri, North Dakota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. But it's important to note that not all establishments within these states actually participate in the CIS program. In order to participate in this program, certain requirements must be met by the firm, and those include that the firm has fewer than 25 employees, has a proper food safety system, and it meets all of the FSIS facility requirements. In order to be selected, a firm must meet all FSIS requirements as the same as a federally inspected establishment. And then in these establishments, FSIS conducts regular reviews. Shayla?
Yes, thank you, Phil and Carlin, for that overview of FSIS programs. Now we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is a presentation by Rural Development on funding for small-scale processors. It's my pleasure to turn over today's call to the 1RD Guarantee Initiative Executive Leadership, starting with Deputy Administrator of Rural Business Cooperative Service, Mark Brodziski.
Thank you, and we're glad to connect today. It looks like we have a pretty large audience, and we're still picking up a little bit, but we're glad to connect and share some information regarding our rural development, rural business, and cooperative service programs. As introduced, my name is Mark Brodziski. I'm the Deputy Administrator here with the Rural Business Cooperative Service. I'm joined by my colleague, Andrew Jamalowitz. You want to flip to our next slide, please. Andy is the Assistant Deputy Administrator here with our agency, really leading up our division, focusing on business development. Together, we're going to try to give you some highlights on a listing of programs. We're going to flip one more slide. Now, this list, we're not going to get through all of these today, but what we thought we'd do is at least give you an introduction to the programs that can assist in providing financial assistance to small-scale meat processors. We're going to start with some of our guaranteed programs. The guaranteed programs mainly focus on a little bit larger scale, but do not have minimum loan amounts. So we thought they would be definitely something that may be of interest to many of you. We're going to also touch base a little bit on some of our specialty programs, some of the energy efficiency, and value-added programs that also can provide some assistance, but a little more focused as to financial assistance for projects. We're going to just touch on very quickly a couple of programs that work through intermediaries. So these are intermediary lenders that then work with small businesses and micro businesses in providing financial assistance. And finally wrap up with a little bit of technical assistance that we provide through cooperative development and some other community development technical assistance. So all that within, I think, 10 minutes or less. So the next slide, please. So starting off with our Business and Industry Guaranteed Loan Program. This is the largest business program that we operate here within Rural Business Cooperative Service. both in dollar amounts and in reach in a sense of types of projects. This is a guaranteed loan program where we guarantee loans made by commercial lenders to rural businesses. This can be really any size or scale of a business in a rural community. These are community banks, local banks, regional banks, national banks, credit unions, farm credit system. Those are all eligible lenders within the program. Basically, they make a loan to the business, and we would guarantee that loan. The advantage of this program is that by the USDA guaranteeing loans, many lenders will offer a little bit lower interest rate and longer repayment terms for financing that they're providing. The types of borrowers or businesses eligible under this program really are any business purpose in a rural community. For-profit businesses, nonprofits, and cooperatives are also eligible for the program. Next slide, please. A more recent program is our B&I CARES Act Guaranteed Loan Program. This program is stood up on the foundation of the program I just talked about. So a lot of the program requirements, the types of lenders, types of borrowers, all are the same as the B&I Guarantee Program. But the CARES Act Guaranteed Program focuses on guaranteeing loans, again, to businesses in rural communities, but for working capital purposes to help recover from the coronavirus pandemic. So loans can be from basically any amount up to $25 million. Again, these are working capital loans, so basically loans to cover operating costs and could be up in an amount up to a full year of operating expenses for a business, could include principal and interest payments. As I mentioned, it really models after the B&I program, but it expands its eligibility to include ag producers for ag production. So any of you, if you're vertically integrated and you have operations of ag production and processing and need some operating cash, this may be a program to take a look at. Again, it's through local banks, farm credit, credit unions are all lenders on this program, and they would apply to us for the guarantee on the program. Whereas the B&I program, the standard program, is open and available throughout every year and going forward. This program is limited, though it is authorized to run up through next fiscal year, up through the September 2021, or as long as funds last within this program. We have about $1 billion available in this program. And with that, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to turn over to Andy Jamalowitz, if we can flip to the next slide, and talk about a couple other programs. Andy?
Okay, thank you, Mark, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today to talk about some of the good programs we have at RD. As you'll see, we don't offer any program that is just exclusive to small-scale meat processors, so it is just our portfolio of programs that have applicability, and we have worked in this space over many years. And we've seen particularly an uptick in some of the interest and demand for our programs over the last 10-plus years as people, consumers and producers have both become a lot more interested and engaged in the local and regional, food systems. And as Mark just discussed with the B&I, that is our big program for financing, and I think you can all see the applicability to, meat processing through. You could use that program for the construction, expansion, modernization, retrofitting of a facility. Great program, and as Mark mentioned, it does have its benefits by having USDA and they're offering the guarantee. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit, probably one that you probably don't really ever even think about when you're thinking small-scale meat processing and thinking about rural energy, but renewable energy. But we do offer our Rural Energy for America, or referred to as REAP. This promotes the use and incorporation of renewable energy systems and energy efficiency improvements into, agricultural operations. Eligible applicants for this program are ag producers and rural small businesses. The program is, split on it. There's both offers a guaranteed loan portion and the grant portion, excuse me. It does focus on some of the actual incorporation of renewable energy systems. As you see on the slide here, we're talking wind, solar, anaerobic digesters, biomass. The program can be used to, put a system in, retrofit an existing system, and incorporate that in. Again, the purpose kind of being there to reduce the reliance on the electricity from the utility and have it generated there, cutting the cost of operation, improving margins, making a stronger business. On the other side, when we're talking energy efficiency, energy improvements, you're looking at making improvements in some of the physical structures at a facility, whether it be lighting, heating, cooling, fans. So you could see the application, particularly in meat processing, again, of conversion of incandescent or fluorescent lighting to LED, upgrading a HVAC system or cooling system, fans. There is a lot of refrigeration in meat processing. And this could be, the program can be used to upgrade or purchase, new, more high energy efficient, cooling systems. Also, a big thing is like on insulation, making a facility more energy efficient through insulation. Again, looking there again, a grant. We run this program. Their open window is in October and March, run twice a year. You can see some of the details there on the grant amounts, and notice that it's like on the grants, it can cover up to 25% of the project. So the grant can be used to cover the 25% on the that's on both on the energy systems and for energy improvements. We go over to on the loan, guaranteed loan portion. Again, it's a loan. It's much bigger. Again, you can see the particulars there, how much we have. These are farm bill programs. We do have money, and we do, again, very popular program, a lot of applicability, I feel, for people working in the meat processing space. I'm going to shift gears now to a very popular program we administer here. It's called the Value Added Producer Grant Program. As you see in the title, this program is really focused more on the producers of agricultural products. The program is designed to take like an ag producer from being just a commodity supplier to actually being a business owner or a business participant, and retaining some of that value that's moved through the as it moves through the supply chain back on the farm, back to the producer. Again, as I mentioned, this is designated for producers, but it can be with some of the producer businesses. The eligible applicants are the independent producers, a ag producer group, a farmer rancher cooperative, and a majority controlled producer-based business. The program is split into two types of grants. You have a planning grant that has a maximum of $75,000 and a working capital grant that is up to $250,000. There is a match requirement here, and it is one-to-one, but it is not necessary that it has to be a full cash match. There is a limited opportunity for in-kind, participation, as well as some of the value of the product that's being used in the project. So there is ways to address the match requirement. And okay, I want to go back to value added a little bit again here real quick. On the planning grant, in terms, we've seen a lot of interest in this program being used by a variety of the livestock, poultry, producers. On the planning side, if you were a steering committee or a co-op or another form of groups, you could use this program to do a independent third-party feasibility study business plan for a meat processing facility. We've seen this used in the past. There's an opportunity there. On the working capital side, again, this is to create new or expand new marketing options for the producer, and the program can be used to develop not to develop, but to market new products. So if you had something, we see new packaging for a certain cut of, beef or pork or a beef jerky or some type of consumer-ready or institutional-ready, product. So this program can be used for the working capital to help in the market development. Lastly, we're going to go quickly. As Mark mentioned, we have our intermediary relending programs. Overall, what this is that USDA Rural Development provides funding to an intermediary at zero or very low interest, and the intermediary in return looks to do lending, most likely micro-lending, smaller lending for projects in a particular area or in a particular sector. For example, we have the Rural Economic Development Loan and Grant Program. That one works directly with rural utility co-ops, and USDA will provide essentially it's a grant, zero interest award to the rural utility, who will in turn work with, we refer to as ultimate recipients, to to finance, to make a low interest loan available to a project in the utilities operation area. We've seen this program be used, just for an example, it's not a fiscal plant, but it's been used to help some producers purchase a mobile slaughter unit. So we have multiple, programs here, and as Mark mentioned, we have a couple of technical assistance, our Rural Business Development Grant. While being able to finance or to support a relending fund, it is also a very good program for provision of technical assistance. And we've mentioned co-op a couple times. While we have some capacity here in D.C. to support some of the co-op development, we also administer a Rural Cooperative Development Grant Fund program that supports typically up to 30 centers, 30 cooperative development centers across the country, who are available to provide technical assistance in the organization and development of a co-op. We do provide on our website a wide variety of publications that focus on co-op development, how to start, some of the accounting and finance taxation resources that would be needed. And again, as our Deputy Undersecretary said, a lot of this happens, we encourage you for your first contact to be, through our state office. And even if you haven't heard, we haven't covered the particular project you want, reach out to us and talk. If you bring a project to us, we usually are pretty good about finding what program we have in our portfolio to help. And Mark, I'm going to quickly turn back to you to cover everything else I missed.
Thank you, Andy. I think I'll just reiterate, when we're referring to contact our state office, what we mean is our USDA Rural Development Office. And as I was working here, I just Googled or use your favorite search engine and just do that. Just find my local USDA Rural Development and likely will pop up. But this middle website here, the Contact Us state offices, also has a mapping program to it. Just click on your state, and then it'll pop up with a listing of local offices or other offices and contact information. Basically, nearly all the programs that we're talking about are delivered through our field office structure, and we're here at the headquarters really to support our field office staff. So that's why we're suggesting that you work with them, but we're always glad to follow up with any assistance or questions or guidance. If you do find a program you're interested in, again, the applications themselves for all these programs are submitted through our field office structure. So with that, I think we're going to kind of wrap up our opening comments and try to save some time for you for some Q&A. So I'll turn it back.
Yes, thank you, Mark and Andy, for that overview and for highlighting some key RD programs and the points of contact that folks need. We are going to open it up for questions. Just a reminder that you can submit your questions to the panel via the chat feature in the WebEx screen, or you can place yourself into the question queue to ask a verbal question, and I'll let Andre explain how to do that.
Thank you. To ask a question, press pound 2 on your telephone keypad. You will hear a notification when your line is unmuted. At that time, please state your question. Alternatively, you may submit your question in the message box provided. We do have a hand raised. Please go ahead and state your name.
I am not able to access the slides or the chat that you're referring to. Can you tell me how to do that, please?
For the questions in the chat on the WebEx, in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you will see a chevron symbol that says chat, and if you click on that chat box, it should open, and you'll be able to type your message in the message box below.
So while folks are getting into the queue, we do have some questions that have been submitted via the chat. Several folks have asked about the availability of the presentation and the slides after the fact. And yes, we will be making this available on both the RD and the FSIS website. You will have a recording of the presentation as well as a copy of the slide deck. So you'll be able to access those links and revisit the information that you need to at any point. And we'll send out an email to let folks know when that information is available, when you can find those resources and where. We also had another couple of questions submitted into the chat. So one from Emily Buckman asked, how are inspectors paid essentially? What are the inspected facilities responsible for? So I think that'd probably be best answered by FSIS.
Sure. This is Phil Bronstein. So our federal inspectors in our establishments are paid by the federal government. Every establishment is entitled to 8 hours of inspection. If there is an additional volume where the establishment can routinely produce on 2 shifts, which is very rare for very small establishments, but can happen, then we can provide 2 8-hour shifts of inspection. Anything over that, there are overtime costs that are incurred by the establishment, and we will still provide the inspection, but they will be charged an hourly rate, which is determined every year.
Thank you, Phil. Our next question that was submitted via the chat feature comes from Bob Dale, and he asked, in order to use programs like the VAPG, would a meat processor need to be part of the federal inspection program, or how would they qualify just having state inspection? So I think this question is better answered by Mark or Andy.
Sure, Andy, you want to address value added? Yes.
Yeah, I think for value added, in terms of whether it was the processor, I think the part about value added, you will have to have some producer ownership there, but I don't think we're going to have a problem. We have not differentiated between the state and federal inspection with that program. So if you were under state inspection, you could still qualify for VAPG.
Okay, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
I just said I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I thought that's what I heard. If it had to be federal inspection, and we recognize the state inspection with VAPG.
Yes, I think that is what they were asking, if it had to be federal inspection. So thank you for clearing that up. Our next question, we have a question about whether or not we could highlight the partnership between RD and the Small Business Administration to increase investment in rural America, and if we had any information around that we could provide.
That's, again, Andy again, and Mark can jump in, but that's a very good point for people who may or may not be aware. There is a memorandum of understanding between USDA Rural Development and the Small Business Administration, and what we're looking to do is partner, collaborate, find ways where we can work better together. SBA now has a Rural Affairs Office that is looking to see how they can work with their programs better into some of the rural communities where we probably don't have all that much to report yet now, but it is something that's ongoing. We have commitment on both the RD and the SBA piece. We're just looking for these opportunities where we can partner, where we can leverage the different programs. And again, this is another example. If you've got a program or if you've got an idea out there, a project or an idea, is to reach out to RD, and we can hopefully help kind of walk through this. And if it's something that we can't maybe accomplish through one of our programs, we do have that ability to help you engage better with SBA.
Okay, thank you for that. And then another question we have is more about the application deadline for the Rural Energy for America. According to the person asking the question, online it says that it's closed currently, and it closed as of April 15th, 2020. So they're asking if it's been extended.
Right, and that references to the current fiscal year program, so that is closed, but the day after that closes, the next cycle opens. So as you mentioned earlier, so the next application deadline, especially for smaller scale grants, for grants of $20,000 or less, the next application deadline is October 31, and then for larger grants, and again for smaller scale grants, March 31 will be the final deadline for FY 2021. So we're always accepting applications. So once one window closes, the next opens, and we can continue processing requests under the REAP program. The guaranteed loan program is a little bit different under the REAP in that operates as an ongoing basis. So we don't have deadlines. We have a pool of funds available to guarantee loans for lenders under the REAP program, as we mentioned. Good.
Great, thank you. Our next question submitted in the chat asks, so are only the 7 CIS states that can process for export and interstate? So I'll ask Phil to maybe clarify that one for us.
Correct. So you can either have a federal grant of inspection by FSIS, which will allow you to do interstate and export to other countries, or you can be a member of a state MPI program and also fall under a CIS agreement, and then you can do interstate commerce.
Great, thank you. And then our next question via the chat asks, would new businesses be eligible for the Rural Energy for America grant, or only existing businesses that are updating?
So this is Mark. Yes, so under the REAP program, the Rural Energy for America program, a new business could apply for the renewable energy component. So if you're putting in either a solar, maybe solar hot water or solar PV, a geothermal, other renewable energy system, a new business can apply. But for the energy efficiency, the energy efficiency component needs to show that they're saving energy by upgrading equipment. If it's a new facility, it would be hard to show that. If it's a new business but an existing facility, if you have the records of energy consumption over history, then it might be possible. But the energy efficiency, again, it's kind of the baseline is the historic use, and then the grant is used to upgrade equipment to more efficient, replacing equipment and systems with more efficient equipment and systems.
Thank you. Our next question from the chat says, what is the typical turnaround time for obtaining federal inspection from application to grant of inspection? And then also, what is the FSIS capability to take on new facilities for inspection? So, Phil, do you want to tackle that one for us?
Yeah, sure. So the average time to get a federal grant of inspection, really, I think the principal driver on that is the state of the facilities, and you have to have the sanitation, have the actual structure, the footprint of the establishment, and the biodefenses that are needed around there to make sure the pathogens and other animals can't get into the establishment. So it can be as quick, and there used to be also a longer lag time for development of food safety plans, but since we've implemented ASSEP in the 90s, there has flourishing of resources out there to help establishments develop food safety plans. So that's usually not the biggest driver anymore. So it can be in the period of a couple of months too. If there's a significant capital improvements that need to be made, it can be several months or a year or more to get those grants. But we really grants of inspection. So we really do, offer a lot of outreach, offer a lot of information. If you are interested, contact your district office, talk to them about your situation, and they can walk you through the likely pitfalls of getting that grant of inspection.
And in terms of our capacity to take on new facilities?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sorry about that. Yes, we are always we always have the ability to provide inspection. If you can get the grant up and going, we can find a way to find an inspector for you. We do have other programs where we can sometimes state in other states there are the Talmadge-Aiken programs where we have state inspectors in some way that do some of the smaller establishments, which are they're still federal inspections, but they're performed by state inspectors, and there's only a few of those states out there, but we always find a way to provide inspection if you can get a grant of inspection.
Great. And then sort of a nice segue there, I have someone who has asked what the cost for federal inspection application is. So I think maybe if there's a cost involved in the application process.
Yeah, so there's no cost in that. As I said before, I mean, your chief drivers, if you're going to need somebody, a third party to help you develop a food safety plan, that can sometimes be some costs, and then any capital improvements that you need to do to bring the establishment up to the standards required by the grant of inspection are the chief drivers of costs, which can vary widely.
Great. Thank you, Phil. And now I think this is another question probably for Mark and Andy, but someone asked via chat, as a small meat processor in North Carolina, what grants are available to help upgrade equipment?
Upgrade equipment. Again, we probably need a little bit more specifics, but I think as Mark kind of just walked through, you would have that possibility of looking at the REAP program.
Okay.
For some of the energy efficient improvements. And again, there would be, we would, like to talk. Again, we did mention the intermediary, relending program. There could be opportunities there. Again, I know it's not a grant, but the purpose of those programs is to provide, much better financing and much better terms so that the business may be able to get a really good deal through the intermediary, sorry about that. And so there are options. And, again, if you come to RD, propose with us, we'll gladly have that conversation and how we can find, the program that's best.
Okay. I think that's great. It gives them a starting point for that. I have another attendee who asked via the chat whether shellfish, including mollusks and oysters and other marine species, whether processing for those would be considered under these programs as well.
So for FSIS, we only regulate meat, poultry, and processed egg products. The one exception to kind of the broad band, the broad definitions of that is that Congress defined Soleriformes or catfish as being a meat product, so we provide regulation on that. The rest of it would be through other agencies.
Okay, and Andy, at Rural Development, our door's open to everybody. We've worked with multiple fish, seafood, shellfish, projects over the years through the BNI. Clearly something in our value-added producer grant, our co-op development, and we think we've been remiss when we talk about what other programs are available. Rural development, again, our space is rural, and the Rural Business Cooperative Service, we have the broadest definition of what a rural area is. That's just, in general, cities or towns of 50,000 or less. Now, you do have other USDA agencies, in particular something like Agricultural Marketing Service, that also has programs available out there that could be, very much applicable to something here with some of their local food promotion, farmers market promotion. There are investments there, both on grant programs that could fit into space.
Okay, thank you. Another question we have via chat, and I think this segues nicely. They ask, are the value-added planning grants available for general planning of rural business and farms? And at which point, what are the steps to make that application?
Value-added, again, yes, it could be available if it's, again, if you make the qualification as being a producer, having something that you are a producer, and you're going to look to, you're proposing to establish a value-added business. Again, we need a little bit more specifics, but it would be, it sounds to me, at least initially on that question, that it would be something we could consider. For value-added, the current cycle of funds is just about ready to be announced. We're hoping to announce awards in the next several weeks. The program will be run again in fiscal 2021, and so I would just be kind of paying attention. It is a nationally competitive program. We do run that program once a year. Our target will be to get a notice out as early as possible in the new fiscal that starts October 1. And we provide a host of information on the program website. We do provide, it's not mandatory, but we do provide a application guide that, again, we can help applicants walk in, and a couple of our partner and stakeholder groups also offer some. It's a very popular program. And even though the program may not be open now, if you are interested, I always encourage people to go take a look at it and get to know it. It's grant funding, but the application can be, like all federal programs, can be a little bit challenging. So I would encourage you to at least become familiar with the program. And again, the states are probably going to kill us, but reach out to the state office. They'll be happy to provide you some background on the program and how to go about accessing it.
Great. I want to check in with Andre to see if we have any folks in the question queue at this time.
Yes, we do have, looks to be 7 questions on the phone line. Going back to the first individual, go ahead. All right, not hearing anything. Moving on to the next caller. Please go ahead.
Okay, I do have a question. We are USDA approved plant. 5,800 is our establishment number since the early 80s, and we want to participate in the farm to family food box. Do I have to apply a new application for that?
So I think
I don't see any reason for you to have to apply for a new grant of inspection for that. If there's a reason for you to apply for something else because it's an AMS requirement or something like that, that might be. But as far as FSIS, there's not a reason for you to apply for a different grant of inspection. You can produce any products that fall underneath FSIS regulation with the grant of inspection that you have. I'm assuming.
So one more question. So the AMS is different from USDA?
Well, AMS is different than FSIS. It's part of USDA, just like FSIS is World Development and many others.
So my grant of inspection for USDA won't cover AMS.
Oh, I'm not saying that. I don't know what the requirements are to do the what you're referring to as the box, the product. What I'm saying is if you have a federal grant of inspection and what you're talking about is producing a meat, poultry, or processed egg product, your grant of inspection is adequate for that. If there's some additional requirements that are required by AMS, you'd have to reach out to them and see what those are. Because I'm not familiar with what the AMS requirements are.
All righty. Thank you so much.
And moving to the next caller, please go ahead. I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead, loud and clear.
Yes, hi. My name's Alex here in the Bristol Bay area, and we're starting a small processing plant in our community. And part with that is some of us, our community has some small tenders. Could some of the funds be used to upgrade our tenders? Hello?
So, hello. Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear what you were asking.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, we're building a small processing plant in our village in the Bristol Bay area, and my question is, our tribe had purchased a small barge tender. Would we be able to utilize these funds to upgrade our tender to be able to purchase fish in the fishery and bring it up to the processing plant?
I think some application of that, I don't know about if there's grant dollars available for that, but that's certainly something on like we would consider infrastructure that could easily fall, be eligible under the Business and Industry Guarantee Program.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question.
Sure.
Okay, we're also filling out a Department of Energy grant for some high energy profiles for solar powering some of our freezing sectors. Would we be able to combine a DOE grant with this grant?
With the Rural Energy for America program, the grant there cannot be matched by other federal grants. Now, if they're, we can provide up to a 75% grant. So if, with the guaranteed loan, our grant is if the DOE grant does not hit the maximum, then yes, it can be paired, but we cannot use another federal to provide the match funds, and the match still needs to come from the client on a REAP program.
Okay, thank you.
And in general, different federal programs or even USDA programs can be laddered or can be leveraged, but what you have to be very observant about is that you can't use, like two different programs to essentially do the same thing. So you have to show very clear separation that if you're using this program to do this portion of a project, the other grant would have to be doing something completely different. You can't, you need to avoid that you're receiving duplicative funding.
Yes, understood. I've just written that down. Thank you.
To the next caller, please go ahead. Not hearing anything. Moving to the next caller.
Hello.
Please go ahead. Yes. Hello.
Yes. We are a small USDA processing plant here in Northeast Alabama, and we would just like to know how to apply, what grants to apply for in order to add on and add more equipment.
Well, I'll start with from the USDA Rural Development side. Again, our grant programs that we have available are very specific for either for a, if you're a producer in a vertically integrated and doing a value-added project for either working capital or planning, so not for equipment. And then under the other programs we have, really our grants are made more for nonprofits and other economic development entities to then assist small businesses. So while we may make a grant to an intermediary, they use those funds to assist small businesses either through a loan program or through technical assistance. In many cases, those loans are very low interest. So that's why we're really suggesting that you contact our local USDA Rural Development Office, and they can provide you a listing of the intermediaries and other vendors that utilize our program and work with small businesses. The Business and Industry Program is a guaranteed loan, not a grant program, and again, it could be available depending on the size of loan that you need or type of activities that you need.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Next caller, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. My question is about the grant for the planning, the $75,000. You were saying that you could use other means of a cash match. Would that be like your cattle and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean a reasonable fair market value of what you would be bringing into, and we've got ways to assist people to show how to document both. Well, you obviously have market prices that could show what the value of the raw product is, the cattle, and then again also, again, there's a limited amount of time and expertise, and you can value that at. We have formulas to help you value that. So yes.
And a second part to that question is if you were talking about using some of that grant to get feasibility studies and things like that completed, do you guys offer any type of support to help get the ball rolling on those type of things to begin the process, so to speak?
Are you asking about applying to the program, or again, I think, or locating somebody who can assist you with the feasibility study or business plan?
Right. So do you guys offer selections or people that help you find those resources in your area? Do you guys offer those type of things through your website or your agency?
We would. I would probably say, again, if you were starting to work with at your local level, the people at the state office will probably have. We do not necessarily refer anybody in particular. So we're not showing any bias toward any particular ones. But again, most cases your land grant university could be a good place to start. They have economic development planners there, and I would start looking around. We probably could offer a list. We have a wealth of stakeholders, and I imagine there's a number of people on the call here today who would be great resources to assist with helping you out with the business plan or feasibility study.
Okay, thank you.
And to the next caller. Please go ahead. Not hearing response. Going to the next caller. Please go ahead. And moving to the next caller.
Hi. I was hoping that you could comment on some of these FSIS and state kind of cooperative agreements, as well as the CIS agreements, kind of especially how they would apply to tribal nations that are looking to create their own processing plants.
So we have worked with, we have one federally regulated establishment on tribal lands, and I personally have taken part in conversations with other tribes that are looking to put slaughter and processing facilities onto the tribal lands, and we're completely and open to those conversations. As far as it goes from state to state, that would be a conversation you would have to have if that state already has an MPI program and a CIS program. You would have to have that conversation with the state where you are located. Otherwise, FSIS is also an avenue that you can look for if you want to be federally inspected and be able to participate in interstate commerce. But there aren't any special restrictions or that we would have for anyone doing anything under tribal lands.
Okay, great. And do you know if Montana happens to be one of those states?
Montana does not operate under the CIS program. In order for you to produce and ship product out of the state, you'd have to have a federal grant of inspection.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
And that would be a good segue.
Oh, go ahead.
If you can pause just a second, Andre. We had a question come in via the chat where they wanted to understand the advantage or the differences between being federally inspected and being under a state MPI or CIS program. So could you briefly highlight that, Phil?
Yeah, sure. So as we kind of outlined throughout the presentation, being federally inspected means that you can do interstate commerce and export to international trade partners with FSIS being there and having a grant of inspection. Some states also, a lot of times there are smaller establishments or local establishments who don't necessarily want to invest in sort of interstate commerce, and in those cases, the state MPI programs oftentimes offer the best option for those establishments out there. Once again, the difference being that you have to have a same as for FSIS, either interstate commerce with the CIS program or FSIS, and at least MPI program. So a lot of times people point out the advantages of a state meat and poultry inspection program as being, you have local folks there that understand a little bit better and can offer a little bit better support to those smaller establishments that are in there. But as we laid out, the MPI programs, that is only for intrastate inspection and commerce and intrastate commerce. And if you do want to go interstate, there are special requirements for you to be under CIS, and you have to have the same as an FSIS regulated establishment.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. We have several more questions that have been submitted via the chat, and I think we have a few more folks on the phone, but we are over time at this point. So I wanted to give us a chance to kind of close out the event. Those who have submitted their questions via chat, we will get you responses or connect you with the right folks to get answers that you need. And anyone who didn't get a chance to ask their question on the phone, they can certainly email either agency or contact either agency, and I'm sure we'd be happy to answer those questions. And for our closing, I'm going to turn it over to Paul Kicker to say a few words.
All right. Thanks, Shayla. So I think one thing that's very clear here is that if you are interested in what's available as far as FSIS or rural development, the place to start is to reach out to the district office that covers the state that you're in for FSIS, or to the state director or the state office for rural development. Those are the places to start and get the and get headed in the right direction. So I just want to say thanks to everyone for participating either in the webinar or on the phone today. Special thanks to everyone that presented and to our panelists. And I hope that small processors have found the information that we provided today to be helpful and to make you aware that both FSIS and RD, which are both USDA agencies, are here to assist you. And don't hesitate to reach out with additional questions using the links or the phone numbers that were provided earlier in the presentations. We need to hear from you in order to know what it is that your needs are and what it is that you're looking for. So thank you very much for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for being here with us today. Thank you.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using AT&T Event Conferencing Enhanced. You may now disconnect.